How do you start your photography business and start earning money with your photography this year? We are going to cover everything today, from the gear that you need initially to get started, to what you can offer to your clients, how you can start building up your photography portfolio, and how you can find those very first clients for your business. I was exactly where you are 5 years ago, so I know how it feels like to be at the very beginning and to not know where to start, and everything feels super complicated and overwhelming. Now, 5 years later, I successfully run my photography business. I already have a few publications and exhibitions under my belt, and now I want to break it down step by step for you so you can do the same thing. Let's start with part 1, the gear that you need. So my rule of thumb for gear for absolute beginners is the best gear is the one that you already have. When I got started 5 years ago, I didn't really have any modern gear. I had an old analog Minolta 35mm camera that would shoot a roll of film, 36 exposures, and that's how I got started to shoot my first clients. And it took me a while until I upgraded to something else. So I would always say, start stupid simple. If you have a camera at home already, start using this camera. If maybe somebody in your family has a camera just lying around somewhere, and chances are in most families, somebody bought a camera at some point, borrow that camera and start shooting with that. You can always spend a ton of money later, and you can always upgrade later, but the gear doesn't make the photographer. The photographer makes the photographer. So it's best to be frugal in the beginning and then upgrade as you go. Okay, but let's say you don't have any gear lying around, and maybe you have saved some money up to intentionally buy your first camera. Then my recommendation would be to buy a full frame camera or a camera with an APS-C sensor, and to buy that camera secondhand if you can. I wouldn't buy it secondhand of a private person. I would always go to a dealer that has some checks and balances in place to make sure you have some kind of warranty on the tech that you are buying. But I would say, don't drop your money on the newest generation of cameras that have just come out. Go a few generations back and see if you can buy that type of camera at a discount. And with that camera, say preferably a full frame camera, I would go with a 50mm prime lens. So if you're buying full frame, then it would be a 50mm lens. If you're buying a camera with an APS-C sensor, it would be an equivalent of 35mm lens. And why would you go for that focal length as a beginner? I would say 50mm is the easiest focal length to learn on as a beginner, because it is the equivalent of how our eyes naturally see. So what you see through the camera is kind of an equivalent to what you would see just looking out with your eyes into the world. So if you want to get a closer shot, you actually have to move closer with your camera. And if you want to be further back, you have to move further back with your camera. And that's a really good thing to learn in the beginning. Instead of buying, let's say, a zoom lens and zooming back and forth and not really approaching the subject with your body. I would say that's especially true for portrait photographers. I'm sure there's some other rules out there if you are shooting other types of photography like weddings or architecture. There's a few more basics that you will need alongside the camera into your primal lens, and that would be an SD card, obviously, to put into your camera, a tripod to put your camera on. In some situations, like low light situations, you will need a tripod, or if you're taking a group photo, you might need a tripod. Then obviously Adobe Lightroom or some sort of editing software that you prefer, a computer to edit on. And I would say for most photographers, it's also beneficial to have some kind of flash in their arsenal. I'm using this Godox flash, sometimes on camera, sometimes off camera. But I would say even in the beginning, I didn't really use that much flash. And I only use it when I was using my point and shoot cameras. But I would say for a lot of different photography styles, you will need a flash at some point. So it's best to have a simple, stupid, again, nothing too fancy, nothing too expensive, but get some kind of basic flash. All right, part 2, what should you be offering? For this part, I also have a rule of thumb for you, and that is offer something that you are good at, that you like doing, and that makes some money. Because obviously, if you're not good at it, then it will suck. You might become better at it, and usually that's what happens. If you're not enjoying it, it will suck. And if it doesn't make any money, it will suck. This is a basic rule you should follow for sure. The next point I want to make here is to actually take the time and educate yourself on the different photography niches out there. Photography is a super fragmented field, and there are tons of different niches out there that you could go into potentially, but not every niche will fit every personality, and not every niche is prone to make you money. So if your goal is to actually start a photography business and not just make photography for yourself or enjoy the art of photography, then have a look at the different niches that are out there. And I have made a video in the past, I'll put a picture up here, that explains the different photography niches out there, how you can get into them, how difficult they are, and what sort of their profitability is. Another point within crafting kind of like what your offer is, definitely look at your own competitive advantage, or sometimes it's called the unfair advantage. And that could be something about you personally, about your prior knowledge, or about the connections that you have, the place that you live in, that gives you a certain edge in a certain field. Let's give you some examples. So let's say you have worked in the bridal industry before, like a bridal shop. I mean, you definitely have a competitive advantage to go into wedding photography because you know how that whole industry works. If you have maybe worked in architecture before, you might consider going into that field. If you love cooking and food and you love like tinkering with food arrangement, then food photography might be your strength. For me, when I was starting out, because my partner is an actor, we kind of knew a lot of actors and I was surrounded by a lot of actors. So headshot photography and actors was kind of a niche that was close to me and that I could access very easily. What I couldn't really access easily is fashion photography because I have no connections in the field. I'm not super trendy and into fashion in my personal life. So that niche seemed very distant and far off for me. So think about those things. Where is your strength? Where do you have connections? Where do you have prior knowledge in? And let that kind of guide you into the niche that you could pick for yourself. Now let's address how to build your first photography portfolio. This is a question that I get quite frequently, and I want to kind of lay it out for you very simply. So ideally, a portfolio is a mix of unpaid projects and paid projects that lays the groundwork for the type of projects that you want to be hired for. So what that means is, it doesn't make any sense if you have super artsy kind of pictures in your portfolio, but there is no actual use case in the market that would require these type of photos. Always ask yourself, what could the potential clients be who would hire me to do exactly this type of shot or this type of work? And only then include that in your commercial or professional portfolio. I'm not talking about artistic portfolios here. That's a whole separate issue. But because we're talking about building a photography business, it is necessary to think differently about your portfolio and always have the potential client who might be hiring you in mind. Notice that I also said paid projects and unpaid projects. And of course, in the beginning, if you're starting out from zero, it will be primarily unpaid projects, unless you are somehow smart and savvy and you find people who immediately pay you for the type of work that you want to do. And that could as well be the case. For me, I maybe did 1 or 2 unpaid shoots, and then I started charging the price of film for it. So I wasn't paid a ton, but I was compensated something for my work. So that will all depend kind of on the niche that you go in and how good you are at negotiating, right? But as time goes on, it will become a mix of the two things. And also it is important, if you are a photographer who's already in this career, to keep doing some unpaid projects that are kind of spec work. Can be a great addition to your portfolio to shoot the type of stuff that you want to be hired for in the future. So let's say you have kind of decided on your niche, and let's say, for example, that you want to shoot couples and weddings. How do you start building up the portfolio? So I would say whatever niche you're going in, it doesn't actually matter what niche it is. Always start with the people that are around you and closest to you. So ask a couple that you know, maybe a couple that's particularly attractive and would look good in photos. Or if you have a favorite restaurant that you go to and you know the owner and you want to do food photography, ask them to do some shoots for them. Or if you know any people working in any companies, and let's be honest, most of us know people working in some type of companies. Even if you're young, maybe your parents are working in some type of company. Do some business portraits for those people if you want to get into business and personal branding photography. So my point is, you don't have to reach for these crazy unreachable projects when you're just starting out. It's stupid simple to start with the people who are closest to you, who you know you have some connection with, and that will be easy to kind of try things out and not be too awkward when you're trying to do some portfolio shoots. And the next point I want to underline in the portfolio kind of section is to do portfolio shoots. Shoot things that you want to be hired to shoot. And I'm not talking about like learning photography. If you're shooting to basically learn your craft, that's a whole separate issue. But I'm talking about going out and dedicating some time to do specific portfolio shoots. And when you do that, make sure that whatever you are shooting is something that you actually want to be hired for to shoot. If you want to be hired to shoot food, shoot food. If you want to be hired to shoot cars, shoot cars. If you want to be hired to shoot portraits, shoot portraits. Because your portfolio will be attracting the type of clients that want the type of work that's part of your portfolio already. People sometimes have very limited imagination. If they don't see something in your portfolio, most likely they won't hire you to shoot that thing. But if they see it represented in your portfolio, chances go up that they say, oh, I also have this thing I want to shoot, and they have it in their portfolio, so let's hire that photographer. All right, I already hear you say, but how do I find clients when I'm starting from scratch? And that is a very, very valid question. And I had that same question when I was starting out. So let me give you some pointers. So point number one, I always reiterate on this channel, and that is be present on social media. Have your portfolio online on things like Instagram, things like LinkedIn, and be present online. We live in the digital age. We live in the age of social media. Whether we like it or not, it's just the fact. And if you're not on there, then you won't be found. Let's say your friend likes your work and they're like talking to their coworker. They're like, oh, you're getting married. I actually know a really great photographer. What is the first thing that this coworker will do? They will go on Instagram and search for your name. And if you're not on there and you don't have a portfolio on there, they're most likely not gonna get in touch with you. But if you are present, then they might get in touch with you. So make it easy for people who know you or don't know you to actually find you. And it kind of goes with that point. Don't make an alias name for yourself on Instagram. Make your name your actual name. So when people search for your name, they will land on your photography page. It's easy to find, it's easy to remember. Nobody will remember Frog 1983 -1, okay? Use your real name. We're past that whole alias thing. It's 2025 now. The next pointer on how to find clients is a very important one, and that is start actually telling people what you offer. So remember, in point 2, we kind of clarified on what it is that we're offering. What type of clients are we approaching? What type of niche are we in? So once we have that clear in our mind and also clear kind of in the portfolio that we're starting to put out there, it is very important that we keep talking about it to the people that we know. And that is especially true when you are starting out from zero. Start telling your parents, your siblings, your spouse, your coworkers, your friends. Start telling them, hey, you know what? I'm offering wedding photography now. Hey, you know what? I'm offering product photography now. Hey, you know what? I'm doing business portraits now. Do you maybe know anybody who could be interested to shoot like a free business portrait? Stuff like that. Get the word out so people know what to associate you with, what type of work you are looking to do, and immediately they will start connecting your name with that thing. And whenever something comes up, and things do come up, they will think of you and they will contact you. And that gets the ball rolling, and ideally then those people who you shot first will further recommend you to other people. People will see your work online, and the ball kind of starts rolling slowly and slowly. And the next point I want to make, I actually made a whole video about it. I will link it up here, and in that video I go like much more into depth about this, but I want to cover it briefly here. And that is that I recommend to you, whatever stage you're at, if you're starting from scratch, or you got the ball rolling a little bit already, or you're like in the middle of your career and you want to get some more clients, is to do strategic sales. So this is just basic business 101. Any business out there, and as a photographer, you are creating your own business. So any business out there, how do they get clients? They do marketing and they do sales. So your marketing in the beginning will be having that social media, talking to your family and friends about what you're doing. That is already the marketing part. And the sales part is to actually think of potential customers in your area or kind of in your vicinity. Make a list of those potential customers and then start reaching out to them with an email, with a phone call, with sending out your portfolio. That could be as a PDF attachment if you're starting very simple. It could be as a printed portfolio if you are a bit more advanced. But basically, always be doing some type of outreach, because even if everybody that you are reaching out to is saying no now, it's a no for now and not for later. They might need a photographer next month, in 3 months, in 6 months, next year. And if you keep kind of reaching out, people will remember you, they will keep you on file, and things will start happening. If you're not doing any type of outreach, nothing will happen. But if you start doing outreach, I promise you, things will start happening for you. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but if you keep adding to your list and doing some outreach, you will get some customers that way, just like any other business out there gets customers that way. So if you found this video helpful at all, please give it a little like so I know I should make more videos like this one. And please subscribe to the channel to not miss out on any next videos coming out. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.